Lesson 7, Calorie Density. In this video, we are going to talk purely about the topic of calorie density, and this is an amount of calories per gram of food. That's what basically calorie density is when I refer to it. Some foods contain loads of calories for a very small quantity, so this would mean that they have a lot of calories per gram. An example on the right hand side, there is Reese's chocolate, and they have about 5 calories per gram, which means they have in 100 grams of Reese's, you have about 500 calories. Then on the other hand, you have some foods that contain a lot of food for very little calories. An apple is a good example of this. They have just half of a calorie per gram. So 100 grams gives you about 52 calories. I mean, strawberries are extremely low, but that's just an example. So when you compare the two, you can see that Reese's chocolate contains 10 times the amount of calories in the same amount of food. So when your goal is fat loss, it can be useful to focus on eating foods that provide a lot of food in terms of quantity for very few calories. Because this is going to leave you feeling fuller for longer as the volume of food you've eaten is higher, even though the calorie content is low. So in this example, you would have to eat a kilogram of apples, which is about 10 apples, to get the same amount of calories as you would from just 100 grams of Reese's chocolate. And I'm sure you can understand how eating 10 apples is going to leave you feeling fuller, if not bloated, for longer, and potentially much more satisfied than eating just 100 grams of chocolate. It's also going to make it easier to stick to your daily nutrition targets and reach your goals. If you're trying to gain muscle, the opposite of this can be true. So eating foods that contain lots of calories in small amounts of food can be useful for hitting higher daily calorie targets without feeling stuffed and bloated. So let's have a look at how calorie density can actually affect a meal. We're going to look at a healthy breakfast on the left-hand side. We've got some yogurt, some honey, some blueberries, and a native green drink. So that comes to about 619 calories, okay? And I used healthy in inverted commas because that's what would be perceived as healthy by mainstream media. Now, if we swap the yogurt for 0% yogurt, so it's a slightly lower calorie. And then we took out the honey but kept the blueberries. And then we swapped the naked greens drink with a bulk greens powder. And all we've done is swap regular yogurt for 0% yogurt, so a lower calorie option. They taste pretty much the same. We've taken out the honey and we've kept the blueberries, so you have the sweetness. And then we swapped a commercial sort of drink, green drink, with a bulk powdered green drink that is less calorific than the sort of commercial, the naked product. So the relatively same breakfast, that means there's now 403 calorie difference between these breakfasts. That's how calorie density can actually affect your calorie intake. So these are pretty much the same breakfast in terms of the amount of food, but the calorie difference is massive. With the breakfast example, you can see how we consumed a similar amount of food, but the second option has taken up less of your daily calorie budget or your daily calorie target. So it is important to look at calorie density on that level. So whatever budget you have for the day, you have more of it left. So if your goal is fat loss, like I mentioned earlier, it's good to focus on calorie sparse foods. So foods that have a low number of calories per gram, so they are quite nutrient rich usually. This is going to allow you to eat more while keeping your calorie consumption low. If muscle gain is your goal, it can be useful to focus on foods that are calorie dense. These foods that have more calories or have a higher number of calories per gram. This means if you have a higher calorie target that sometimes might be difficult to reach, This is going to make it easier for you to reach the target without feeling stuffed and bloated like you're overeating all the time. For example, nuts have a lot of calories per gram. So there you can see the importance of not only calories but calorie density. It's something always useful to check how much food you're getting for the amount of calories you're about to consume. This can have a huge effect on whether you succeed